Hello everyone! Today we're going to be talking about the lore of Eru Iluvatar, the One All-Father, and compare it to the lore of Ouranos Aion, the eternal primordial god of the sky and starry heavens in Greek mythology. First, I'll share with you Eru Iluvatar's music of the Ainur from the Ainur written in the Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien. After that, I'll share with you the famous Theogony by Hesiod, an ancient Greek poet and philosopher thought to have lived around 700 BC. The cosmogonies are in no way, shape, or form consistent to each other. However, I think it'll be interesting to identify key words and show who I think is connected to that word. A reading between the lines, if you will. So, without further ado, the music of the Ainur.
History became legend. Legend became myth.
There was Eru, the One, who in Arda is called Iluvatar. And he made first the Ainur, the holy ones, that were the offspring of his thought, and they were with him before aught else was made. And he spoke to them, propounding them themes of music, and they sang before him, and he was glad. But for a long while they sang only each alone, or but a few together, while the rest hearkened. For each comprehended only that part of the mind of Iluvatar from which he came, and in the understanding of their brethren they grew but slowly. Yet ever as they listened, they came to deeper understanding, and it increased in unison and harmony. And it came to pass that Iluvatar called together all the Ainur, and declared to them a mighty theme, unfolding them things greater and more wonderful than he had yet revealed. And the glory of its beginning, and the splendor of its end, amazed the Ainur, so that they bowed before Iluvatar, and were silent. Then Iluvatar said to them, "Of the theme that I have declared to you, I will now that ye make in harmony together a great music. And since I have kindled you with the flame imperishable, ye shall show forth your powers in adoring this theme, each with his own thoughts and devices, if he will. But I will sit and hearken, and be glad that through you great beauty has been wakened into song." Then the voices of the Ainur, like unto harps and lutes, and pipes and trumpets, and viols and organs, and like unto countless choirs singing with words, began to fashion the theme of Iluvatar to a great music. And a sound arose of endless interchanging melodies, woven in harmony that passed beyond hearing, into the depths and into the heights, and the places of the dwelling of Iluvatar were filled to overflowing. And the music, and the echo of the music, went out into the void, and it was not void. Never since have the Ainur made any music like to this music, though it has been said that a greater still shall be made before Iluvatar by the choirs of the Ainur and the children of Iluvatar after the end of days. Then the themes of Iluvatar shall be played aright, and take being in the moment of their utterance, for all shall then understand fully his intent in their part, and each shall know the comprehension of each. And Iluvatar shall give to their thoughts the secret fire, being well pleased. But now Iluvatar sat and hearkened, and for a great while it seemed good to him, for in the music there were no flaws. But as the theme progressed, it came into the heart of Melkor to interweave matters of his own imagining that were not in accord with the theme of Iluvatar, for he sought therein to increase the power and glory of the part assigned to himself. To Melkor, among the Ainur, had been given the greatest gifts of power and knowledge, and he had a share in all the gifts of his brethren. He had gone often alone into the void places seeking the imperishable flame, for desire grew hot within him to bring into being things of his own, and it seemed to him that Iluvatar took no thought for the void, and he was impatient of its emptiness. Yet he found not the fire, for it is with Iluvatar, but being alone he had begun to conceive thoughts of his own, unlike those of his brethren. Some of these thoughts he now wove into his music, and straightway discord arose about him, and many that sang nigh him grew despondent, and their thought was disturbed, and their music faltered. But some began to attune their music to his, rather than to the thought which they had at first. Then the discord of Melkor spread ever wider, and the melodies which had been heard before foundered in a sea of turbulent sound. But Iluvatar sat and hearkened, until it seemed that about his throne there was a raging storm, as of dark waters, that made war one upon another in an endless wrath that would not be assuaged. Then Iluvatar arose, and the Ainur perceived that he smiled, and he lifted up his left hand, and a new theme began amid the storm, like and yet unlike to the former theme, and it gathered power and had new beauty. But the discord of Melkor rose in uproar and contended with it, and again there was a war of sound more violent than before, until many of the Ainur were dismayed and sang no longer, and Melkor had the mastery. Then again Iluvatar arose, And Ainur perceived that his countenance was stern, and he lifted up his right hand, and behold, a third theme grew amid the confusion, and it was unlike the others. For it seemed at first soft and sweet, a mere rippling of gentle sounds and delicate melodies, but it could not be quenched, and it took to itself power and profundity. And it seemed at last there were two musics progressing at one time before the seat of Iluvatar, and they were utterly at variance. The one was deep and wide and beautiful, but slow and blended with immeasurable sorrow, from which its beauty chiefly came. The other had now achieved a unity of its own, but it was loud and vain and endlessly repeated, and it had little harmony, but rather a clamorous unison as of many trumpets bring upon a few notes. And it essayed to drown the other music by the violence of its voice, but it seemed that its most triumphant notes were taken by the other and woven into its own solemn pattern. To be continued in the third theme, the secret fire. Now the lore of Ouranos, spoken through the Greek cosmogony of Hesiod's theogony. Verily at the first, chaos came to be. But next, wide-bosomed earth, the ever-sure foundations of all the deathless ones. Who holds the peaks of snowy Olympus? And dim Tartaros in the depth of the wide-pathed earth. And Eros, fairest among the deathless gods, who unnerves the limbs and overcomes the mind, and wise counsels of all gods and all men within them. From chaos came forth Erebos, and Black Night. But of night were born Aether, and day, whom she conceived and bare from union and love with Erebos. And earth first bare starry heaven, equal to herself to cover her on every side, and to be an ever-sure abiding place for the blessed gods. And she brought forth long hills, graceful haunts of the goddess nymphs who dwell amongst the glens of the hills. She bare also the fruitless deep, with his raging swell, Pontos, without sweet union of love. But afterwards she lay with heaven, and bare deep swirling Okeanos, Koios, and Krios, and Hyperion, and Iapetos, Thea, and Re, Themis, and Mnemosyne, and gold-crowned Phoebe, and lovely Tethys. After them was born Kronos the wily, youngest and most terrible of her children, and he hated his lusty sire. And again she bare the Cyclopes, overbearing in spirit Brontes, and Steropes, and stubborn-hearted Arges, who gave Zeus the thunder, and made the thunderbolt. In all else they were like the gods, but one eye only was set in the midst of their foreheads. And they were surnamed Cyclopes, orb-eyed, because one orbed eye was set in their foreheads. Strength and might and craft were in their works. And again, 3 other sons were born of earth and heaven, great and doughty beyond telling, Cautos and Briareos, and Gaies, presumptuous children. From their shoulders sprang 100 arms not to be approached, and each had 50 heads upon his shoulders on their strong limbs, and irresistible was the stubborn strength that was in their great forms. For of all the children that were born of earth and heaven, these were the most terrible, and they were hated by their own father from the first. And he used to hide them all away in a secret place of earth so soon as each was born, and would not suffer them to come up into the light. And heaven rejoiced in his evil doing. But vast earth groaned within, being straitened, and she made the element of grey flint, and shaped a great sickle, and told her plan to her dear sons. And she spoke, cheering them, while she was vexed in her dear heart. My children, gotten of a sinful father, if you will obey me, we should punish the vile outrage of your father, for he first thought of doing shameful things. So she said, but fear seized them all, and none of them uttered a word. But great Kronos the wily took courage and answered his dear mother, Mother, I will undertake to do this deed, for I reverence not our father of evil name, for he first thought of doing shameful things. So he said. And vast earth rejoiced greatly in spirit, and set and hid him in an ambush, and put in his hands a jagged sickle, and revealed to him the whole plot. And heaven came, bringing on night and longing for love, and he lay about earth, spreading himself full upon her. Then the sun from his ambush stretched forth his left hand, and in his right took the great long sickle with jagged teeth, and swiftly lopped off his father's members and cast them away to fall behind him. And not vainly did they fall from his hand, for all the bloody drops that gushed forth, earth received. And as the seasons moved round, she bare the strong Ouranios, and the great giants with gleaming armor holding spears in their hands, and the nymphs, whom they called the Meliae, all over the boundless earth. And so soon as he had cut off the members with flint, and cast them from the land into the surging sea, they were swept away over the main a long time. And a white foam spread around them from the immortal flesh, and in it there grew a maiden. First she drew near holy Cythera, and from there afterwards she came to the sea-girt Cyprus, and came forth an awful and lovely goddess. And grass grew up about her beneath her shapely feet. Her gods and men call her Aphrodite, and the foam-born goddess and rich-crowned Cytherea, because she grew amid the foam, and Cytherea because she reached Cythera, and Cyprogenes because she was born in billowy Cyprus, and Philomedes because she sprang from the members. And with her went Eros, and comely Desire followed her at birth at the first, and as she went into the assembly of the gods. This honor she has from the beginning, and this is the portion allotted to her amongst men and undying gods, the whisperings of maidens, and smiles and deceits, with sweet delight and love and graciousness. But these sons, whom he begot himself, great heaven used to call Titans, strainers, and reproach, for he said that they strained and did presumptuously a fearful deed, and that vengeance would come afterwards. And so that's the Quenta behind the lore of Eru Iluvatar and Ouranos Aion. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, be sure to raise your left hand and proclaim a like and subscribe. If so, a new theme shall begin amid the storm, like and yet unlike to the former theme, and it shall gather power and new beauty.